Today, Ian Botham is the successful chairman of a sports agency, and people pay money to attend dinners in his company and to hear him talk about cricket. No English cricketer in the modern era achieved as much as he did in the game, and none became as famous beyond its boundaries.
You never knew as an opponent what he was going to do, and he could change a match, particularly with a bat, in the space of 40 minutes, and that's what frightens opposition cricketers.
Ian Terence Botham was born in 1955 into a hard-working, close-knit family. And from an early age, he dreamt of becoming a professional cricketer. He left school with no O-levels and joined Somerset in 1973. At the time, the county was a byword for underachievement, but at least it had Brian Close, a Yorkshire hard man, as its captain. In his youth, he had been a hellraiser on and off the pitch, and saw something of that in the young Botham. Botham had the good sense to realise that he could learn a lot from Close, and in the beginning at least, listen to what he had to say.
He taught us how to win and how to enjoy winning and how to want to win, and he showed us by leading.
One could see his spirit that he had. You know, that he sort of did things and thought later.
His batting in his younger days, very powerful and very correct. He's always had a very, very good technique. His bowling, people didn't think much of.
No one was quite sure whether he was a batsman who bowled or a bowler who bats. He could hit the ball a long way, everyone spotted that. But it wasn't, you know, blaringly obvious that we had some sort of genius on our hands.
He got his first team cap in 1974, and in a cup game with Hampshire that summer, Somerset were heading for defeat when the 18-year-old Botham was sent in to bat. He took his mark and turned to face Andy Roberts, then regarded as the fastest bowler in the world.
He bowled him a bouncer, and of course Ian ducked. Took his eye off the ball and ducked, and it hit him on the side of his head.
For a stupid moment, I thought I could hook him. And I got to about here and went, oh dear, I'm in trouble. And it hit here, cut the eye up here, and knocked 2 teeth out this side, and the shock knocked 2 out this side.
And he sort of shook his head and rubbed it, and he said, I'm all right, skipper, you know. And of course, that was a sure sign that you'd got somebody who the game meant more to him than his own feelings.
Somerset won an unlikely victory, largely due to Botham's innings. For the first time, he was mobbed by an adoring crowd. It was his first taste of public adulation. Botham had arrived.
Rest of it is to keep your bloody eye on him. You know, for when things started to, you know, maybe you could anticipate the odd thing.
But Close didn't anticipate the impulsive Botham's next move. Botham announced he had fallen for the skipper's goddaughter, Catherine Waller.
I turned on Ian and I says, for Christ's sake, Ian, I says, you're too young. I says, in any case, I says, you should be thinking of improving your cricket and all the rest of it. And I turned on Catherine and said, and another thing is, he isn't good enough for you.
Ignoring the advice, Botham pressed on, and at the age of 20, embarked upon a marriage that he has since tested almost to destruction.
Kath and I clicked, and 25, coming on 26 years, we're still together down the road, and it's great, and getting better and better, which is good for both of us. So yeah, I suppose if you find something you want it, and you want it bad enough, you go for it and you get it.
So here was a man who knew what he wanted. And what he wanted next was an England cap. He could bat, bowl and field, cricket's holy grail. And in 1977, his chance came to prove that his talent could be translated to the biggest stage of all, the Test arena.
And he's bowling, first ball. His first wicket in Test match cricket.
By the end of the day, he had 4 more.
I found it was the natural theatre for me. I loved it. I loved the big occasion. The bigger the occasion, the more I wanted to be the centre of attraction. You know, I wanted to be there. I wanted to be taking wickets, taking catches, scoring runs.
Unburdened by doubt or nerves, he played with the flourish of a showman. No one could touch him.
His greatest asset as a cricketer was that he was brave, not just in the physical sense of having his teeth knocked out and batting on, but he was brave because he would risk looking a complete imbecile. He would risk utter failure He set no parameters on himself as a cricketer.
By 1980, England captain Mike Brearley said he no longer wanted to tour abroad. Botham's record on the pitch, he'd already scored 6 Test centuries, made him a contender to take over. But the weakness in his candidacy was that he had no experience of captaincy at county level. Nevertheless, the selectors decided to give youth its chance and offered him the job.
I pleaded with him for half an hour not to take it. Turn it down and let the selectors find somebody a little more experienced. I said it'll come your way eventually.
But Botham was in no mood to listen to Close's advice and took the job.
A world that was so noted for its introversion and backwardness and respect for traditions buried in the mists of times and its general fuddy-duddiness was finally being broken open by someone who looked like, sounded like, and acted like a modern teenager.
At 24, he was the youngest England captain for 98 years. But when it came to man management, he was way out of his depth. To his great surprise, he discovered there was more to it than making sure everyone got their round in at the bar.
I don't think you can quite be like that when you're captain. Sometimes you're going to have to make some, unpalatable decisions, aren't you? You're going to have to tell people things that they don't like. I don't think he could have done that, because he wasn't ready to do that. He just wasn't ready in his own personality.
I couldn't understand why I had to motivate a guy to go and play for his country. To me, just give me the shirt, pull that shirt on with the lion and the crowns. That's me. I'm there. I don't need any more motivation. Just walk in that dressing room with your teammates. What more do you want to be? I'm part of this team. It's England. Let's go out there.
Quite amazing what rhythm these boys can make.
Botham's captaincy was a failure. Unable to lead by example because his own form had collapsed, he lacked the guile needed to get the best from his teammates. England lost back-to-back series against the West Indies.
There's a big one that wins the match.
English cricket looked all washed up. And in the country at large, the mood was ugly.
Unemployment was at record levels. You had a Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, who was already the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. What's more, Michael Foot was the most unpopular ever leader of the opposition. The country was being torn apart by riots. It seemed that the only thing that people had to look forward to was the royal wedding.
As for England, their losing streak continued with the first test of the '81 Ashes series against Australia. It was one thing to be beaten by the West Indies, who were, after all, pretty good. But this was quite another. Botham's position as captain came under intense scrutiny.
Now, directly to England's batting fate at the hands of the Australians. Marshall.
Well, the performers came and went with their tails between their legs, Ian. And at the rate the match is going, they're not going to need 5 days.
England were hammered in 3. Attention shifted to the second test at Lord's. Botham's record as captain, played 11, won none, had won him few supporters in the long room. He needed a big game as never before.
And that's close. He's got him. Lawson has dismissed the England captain, and things could hardly be going worse for Ian Botham at the moment.
But in the second innings, things did get worse.
And I'm afraid that's just not good enough.
He failed to score a single run in either innings.
Prepare for the England captain, Ian Botham.
As he trudged back to the pavilion, the MCC members ignored him.
I think the word I used for them was Muppets at the time. Sat there and it was quite amazing that papers would go up and blokes would give it this one and someone would be doing his shoelace up. Oh, it's pathetic. It really was pathetic. And I never raised my back to them again.
England managed to draw the match, but it was all over for Botham. He resigned the captaincy. Morale collapsed. As Botham left the ground, chairman of selectors Alec Bedser was asked by the press if Botham was about to be sacked anyway.
And I gave the honest answer, yes, we were. I would never have said it otherwise, but I certainly wasn't going to say anything else than actually what the truth was.
Why on earth he came out with that, I think, to be honest, well, it just sums it up, doesn't it? There you go, work it out yourselves.
He's feared two things, I think, in his life. The first is isolation. He's a person, he's a warm person who wants people around him, and he's a bit scared to be alone. So he's always had people around him. And secondly, the other thing he's feared is being looked down upon by people, you know, conventional orthodox people in high places. And that was why when he was sacked as England captain, it was something that bit deep with him, I think.
Mike Brearley, a man whom Botham admired, was reappointed captain for the next test at Headingley in Leeds. England were desperate to avoid going 2-0 down in the series. The question was, could Brearley coax a deflated Botham back to form?
He said to me, look, seriously, do you want to play in this game? I said, yeah, of course I bloody do. You know, what kind of a question's that? And he said, good. He said, because I think you're going to get 10 wickets and 200 runs. And off he went.
He was always able to get the best out of Ian on the field by gently sort of geeing him up, saying the right things to will him to do better, to make him go that extra mile for that extra performance.
Australia won the toss and chose to bat. Brearley put Botham on to bowl. He took the first wicket of the game.
And he's gone, and Ian Botham has done it. Third ball. And the old magic returned.
He seemed very much the same, but in saying that, there was a little bit of there was generally a freshness about the way he was playing. He certainly had a bit of a spring in his step.
Oh, he could be out. Botham underneath, he's got it.
Botham had taken 6 for 95, but Australia had batted brilliantly and were able to declare for 401 for 9. They continued to dominate the match when England came in to bat.
Safely away before. Good shot.
Despite a 50 from Botham, England collapsed for 174 all out and were forced to bat again.
And he's gone. Very fine delivery indeed. Botham just losing concentration, and Rodney Marsh appropriately breaks the world wicket-keeping test record off the bowling of Dennis Lillee, who must surely have given him more victims than any other bowler.
That night the team contemplated certain defeat, with Ladbrokes offering odds of 500 to 1 against an England victory.
The mood from England was, oh well, another one bites the dust. A few of them were under the impression that they might be playing their last game.
I certainly can't remember that much chat about sort of, you know, how we're going to get ourselves out of this one, because it was virtually impossible.
When Botham walked out to bat in the second innings, England were 5 for 105 and still needed 122 runs to equal Australia's first innings total.
The Aussies were strutting around as you would be. They thought the game was wrapped up, and probably I thought that, and probably most sane people thought that.
Botham's quandary will be, is he to play his natural game, or is he to stick around with Geoffrey Boycott?
I thought, right, a bit of fun, chance my arm. If it's up, I'll have a go at it. If it's short, I'll have a go at it. And in between, I'll try and survive.
There is a saying in sport, you know, it's better to have arse than class. And Ian had class, and he also had a lot of... No, he used to call him golden bollocks, you know, because everything used to go right for him.
He looked like he was going to get out any ball. He was scratching around, hit the ball in the air, just out of the reach of fielders.
And that'll be 4 more.
I had a bit of luck, yeah, I flew someone over the top of the slip, some went out the middle of the bat, some went off the inside edge. That was that kind of wicket, you had to chance your arm. Then Graham Dilley came out and played like Gary Sobers at the other end, the innings of his life. Played some amazing shots.
Oh, he's found the gap with no trouble at all. Another tremendous blow through the covers.
I remember saying to him, just keep enjoying it, enjoy it. You know, just have some fun.
I think I was outscoring him to start off with. I don't know whether, you know, it would be typical of him to sort of say to himself, hang on a minute, he's number 9 batter, can hardly hold the bat, and he's outscoring me. You want to try and do something about it.
Oh, that's a magnificent shot. Oh, 3 fours in a row.
You could probably legislate for someone scoring 50, 60, 70, maybe even 80, batting the way he did. You know, he just went after the Aussie bowling and he just flayed them to all parts of the ground.
Then both are looking for that, let alone chasing it. Safely away for 4. That's a splendid 100. A great innings by Ian Botham. And Mike Greeley is just giving him the word to stick around.
When news filtered around Leeds, the sort of feats that Ian was getting up to, there was a much better atmosphere, a tremendous atmosphere. Unbelievable. I mean, these things seem to go out on the radio and the TV, and people come in from everywhere when they hear.
301 for 8, and what a transformation.
England had ensured the Australians would bat again and started to build up a slender lead.
Safely over the top of Hughes' head.
You could just really sense, you know, our guys, you know, going off the boil totally and starting to get a bit jittery about the way the game was going. And England started to think, well, hang on a minute, you know, they've still got a bat on this, got to chase 120 odd, anything can happen.
Oh, magnificent stroke. 4 more runs.
It was great, it was enjoyable, it's what cricket's about. You know, something special happening. It was lovely.
Last ball of the day, the new ball will be due tomorrow. And he's got the single he wanted. So he'll have the strike in the morning. This man who has become, once again, a national hero.
Now for today's good news, here's David Icke with Tales of a Hero Returned.
It really was a magnificent innings by Botham, including, as it did, a 6 and 26 fours. And Botham, in this kind of form, really is a sight to see.
On the final day of the Test, Botham went on to make an undefeated 149 in an England total of 356 all out. Despite this Herculean performance, the Aussies still only needed 130 to win.
They put 50 on the board with not too much problem. So to take, I think it was 8 or 9 wickets for 80 runs, you know, was almost an impossible task. But when Mike really switched Bob Willis down the hill, and he ran in like a man possessed, his eyes were glazed, he was just somewhere else.
He's got a touch on it, he's gone. In the air, Dilly is underneath it. And he caught it!
Bowl in, it's all over, and it is one of the most fantastic victories ever known in Test cricket history.
Willis took 8 for 43, building on Botham's heroic innings to secure the most unlikely of Test victories.
I can understand it being replayed a lot, but just about every rain break we had in like 85 series we're here, 89 series and 93 was, oh no, here we go, Botham bashing us round at Headingley 1981 and then Bob Willis bowling us out. I mean, we've seen it probably more than you guys, or just as much as, and it does get a bit, you know, hard to take, especially as an Australian. We sort of keep thinking, well, haven't you got any other highlights you can show? But obviously not.
In the nigh on 1,500 Test matches that have been played since 1877, only 3 times has a team won the match after following on. I do believe that is the most improbable victory in sporting history.
What makes a man come out there when everything is down, when the game is over, and take a side apart with such thoroughness? Everything, all history had congealed in Ian, the conflicting tendencies in his soul at that moment. And if he allowed them to be contained in there quietly, he would have exploded and done something dastardly. Instead, in cricket, you could do something beautifully that nobody will ever forget.
What came next was almost as heroic. Botham took 5 wickets for 1 run at Edgbaston.
That's it this time, and another memorable victory for England.
And at Old Trafford, he scored another thrilling century. Against all the odds, England won the 6-match series, and Botham's place in cricketing folklore was secure. With an ironic final twist, he received the Man of the Series award from Alec Bedser, who earlier in the summer had wanted to sack him from the captaincy.
I don't hold grudges. What's the point? You know, they did what they thought was right. I hope with the hindsight they see it from the teams, and my point of view, that it was pathetic, or was very poorly handled. That's probably a better word than pathetic, although I did feel it was pathetic at the time.
Against the odds, Roy the Rovers, backs to the wall, whatever cliche you wish to employ, he did it. Now that makes you feel differently about yourself. It's inevitable.
Ian Botham is your choice for BBC Television Sports Personality of 1981.
It was great. I was on the crest of a wave and I was enjoying it. And I've had the saying in my life that you ride the torpedo to the end of the tube, and I was having a great time.
My word, I'm pleased I wasn't in the way of that one.
Everyone likes a winner.
Botham swept the ball away for a single.
And as long as the performances came and the records tumbled, then Botham flourished.
And he's gone. And that gives Ian Botham his 250th Test match wicket. He's the only player in the history of the game to take 250 wickets and score 3,000 runs.
Everyone wanted to know him, they wanted his innermost thoughts, they wanted to know about his relationship with his wife, they wanted everything they could find out about Ian Botham.
Ian Botham is the archetypal 80s sporting celebrity, constantly in bed with the tabloids, but not really understanding the game he was playing. I think nowadays sportsmen are a lot more canny and use the press a lot more cleverly than Botham did.
Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Over the next 2 years, the attention was relentless. The press and even the public began to question whether Botham, the party animal, was still a dedicated sportsman.
We've got a pig on the ground with Botham written on the side of it.
Hadley to Botham, steps away, gives it the reverse lap and he's bowled!
Things came to a head on the 83-84 tour of New Zealand. Against a backdrop of inept England performances, the press pack sniffed out a new story. Botham, they wrote, had been smoking cannabis on tour. He returned home determined to clear his name.
You arrive at an airport with 3,000 or 4,000 people there, or 300 or 400, it seemed like 3,000 or 4,000 people. Well, what are you going to say? What would you do?
Botham categorically denied that he had smoked cannabis on the tour.
Absolutely no drug taking whatsoever.
Well, the Sunday paper names you as having taken your...
I just said. Could you imagine a footballer flying back under those circumstances, being left to walk in and not any help at all, just left there for 300 vultures to hit you? Could you imagine that being happened? No way. He'd have been whisked through and he'd have had advice and he'd been told what to do. Cricket? Nah. No, just leave him. Let them pick over the bones. So you handle it. You know, what am I meant to do? I don't know. You know, it's a situation I shouldn't have been put in.
Botham instructed his lawyer to begin proceedings against the Mail on Sunday. The case would rumble on for the next 2 years.
Libel actions against newspapers are very expensive, and I think Ian's... Oh, I knew him very well, and I would say his main object in all that was to protect his name. It wasn't to get money out of it.
A recurring back injury and his off-field problems began to weigh heavily on Botham.
It's physically impossible for someone to be on parade 16 hours a day. So you've got to be able to relax.
On New Year's Eve 1984, police raided his house looking for drugs.
The Somerset and England cricketer Ian Botham has been fined £100 with £25 costs for possessing cannabis.
He wasn't playing as well as he had been playing. He wasn't enjoying the success that he had been enjoying. And along came someone who told him, I can make you anything you want to be.
That someone was the self-styled Lord Tim Hudson, a former DJ whom Botham employed as his agent.
Someone like Ian has it in him to be gullible and vulnerable to people who tell him what a great bloke he is.
I think he can be Dan Dare, he can be Willie Walls, he can be Raffles, he can be Botham.
Fruitcake.
Botham wanted more than cricket alone could give him, and thought that Tim Hudson could help him get it. Hudson had made a fortune from property development in 60s California, and had established himself at a country pile near Macclesfield. From this alternative Camelot, he and Botham drew up fantastic plans to cash in on Botham's celebrity. a clothing range was launched. And plans hatched to take on the cricketing establishment.
I think it's archaic and out of date, and the game's run by old fubby-dubbies.
Botham lapped it up. At last, he would make the same kind of impact off the field as he had on it. As part of the Botham makeover, Hudson even persuaded him to dye his mullet.
Well, I'm leaving the length, so I'm cutting the top really short. So.
His mullet, especially when it was streaked, definitely sort of set him apart from the Mike Gattings of this world. It was a perfect sort of compromise cut in the sense that it was from sort of head on, it was quite sort of square and 9 to 5-ish.
You go out there, and you're out there every day, and you want something that's manageable. Easy to cope with.
But you kind of rotate the head slightly, and then what the message you're giving out is, I'm a bit of a rebel, you know. I mean, I really let it all hang out at weekends.
With his new image in place, they decided to conquer Hollywood.
The king of the B-movies, that's my title. I think he can be Hopalong Cassidy. He can be Jack London in the Klondike with the sleigh dogs and the horse, and he wins the woman.
If you had the chance, what film would you like to be in?
Oh, I think with 3 or 4 5'7" blondes around me.
We're on a road to nowhere.
Hollywood managed to struggle along without Ian Rambotham.
I wasn't the only one that was sucked in by Tin Hudson, don't you worry about that. I mean, the late, great Sir Colin Cowdery, Lord Cowdery. Colin was very much on his side when he first came along with his ideas, and a lot of other influential people in the world. So I wasn't the only one, I can assure you.
Morning, Beef. Time to get up. What do you want? Pot of tea? Tea and a milkshake.
Just when it seemed that the public could be losing patience with his off-field antics, he embarked on a month-long walk from John O'Groats to Land's End, 874 miles, all to raise money for leukemia research.
I suggest if you have a doubt about why you would do it and why you'd want to do it properly, just go along to Great Ormond Street. Just spend an hour or two there. That's all I did before the very first walk. In fact, I find it very hard to go back there. And most things don't psych me, but seeing those kids, I'll never forget that. And some of them, of course, literally days later, were dead.
People have said to me, how did you manage to get him to do it for you? They stand in amazement. And I say to them all, it's very, very simple. I have never asked him to do one walk for the Leukemia Research Fund. He's volunteered every single one.
Singing in the rain.
The walk was a success when viewed from every angle. Most crucially, it raised £500,000 for research. For Botham, it was too big an undertaking to be dismissed as a mere publicity stunt. Although it did generate masses of positive exposure for him. The general public applauded him every step of the way. With the triumph of the walk still fresh, Botham joined England for its 1986 tour to face the West Indies, the most powerful cricket team on earth. Perhaps the most powerful team ever. During the tour, Botham's love-hate relationship with the press finally broke down. All the ingredients for the bust-up were there. Botham's ghosted column in The Sun meant other papers' journalists had little access to him.
The fact is that if you write exclusively for one paper, all of the other papers will be looking to rubbish you. That's a fact of life. I don't say that's how it should be, but that's how it is.
I was walking down the street, concentrating on truck and right. I heard a dark voice beside of me, and I looked round in a state of fright.
On the pitch, the team were being outclassed. And with his remarks at Heathrow 2 years earlier, where he denied ever using drugs, Botham had made himself a hostage to fortune. The Mail on Sunday was after further evidence to defend its allegation that he had smoked cannabis on the New Zealand tour.
He was in litigation with various newspapers. He had stopped articles appearing. And I do think, therefore, that it was up to certain newspapers to try and get or dish the dirt on Ian Botham. And there was quite definitely, when we were in Jamaica, in the Pegasus Hotel. There was quite definitely a lady there who was out to get Botham and did not succeed.
Then, disastrously, his agent, Tim Hudson, was quoted saying Botham did, after all, smoke cannabis. Doesn't everyone, he asked? Botham called him a raving lunatic and fired him.
Mr. Hudson, might this not be one opportunity to dispose of this reported allegation? It's said that Ian Botham has been taking drugs. You're attributed with saying that.
Sir, I have no comment.
But the damage was done. Botham could no longer reasonably defend himself. The courts had fined him for possession, and now his manager was on record saying he smoked. The press declared open season on him. Soft drugs, hard drugs, womanizing.
It's ridiculous. So, come on, let's wake up and look at it in the cold light of day. And some of the allegations were pathetic.
You've got a squad of young, healthy, virile, in some cases good-looking guys going off for 4-month tours, and inevitably stuff happens.
An ex-beauty queen, Lindy Field, sold her story of an alleged affair to the papers.
Did you get paid for the story?
Well, yes.
Kath Botham flew in from England.
She's pure as New York snow.
And Kathy, what's it been like for you this last few days?
Absolutely dreadful. But I'm glad I'm out here now.
You seem to have had a lot of support, and an awful lot of people have rallied around you.
Everybody has. The general public, friends, family, everybody's been absolutely marvellous. Without exception, really.
She was plain fed up with it. When I stayed at the house, goodness knows what arguments went on or discussions went on. It depressed Kathy. Yeah, that's what I can say about it.
I think loyalty is what life's about. Yeah, I've made my mistakes, which have been always, as always, well publicised. Which, you know, stick your hand up. Yeah, I screwed that up and I messed this up. But luckily, we've both been strong enough to go through those situations and ride through them, which I think says a lot for Kath. It would have been very easy. You know, I love reading these agony ants in the papers. Oh, she should leave him, you know, for whatever he's done. And you'll probably find most of them are sort of lesbians who haven't got a family, don't know anything about a relationship.
Botham, who had previously been quick to use the libel courts to try to protect his name, elected to let the latest allegations go unchallenged. Furthermore, his existing libel action against the Mail on Sunday now looked absurd. Abandoning the case, he decided to come clean.
I have smoked cannabis, and it was a long time ago. And if that, you know, I came up in the period of the 60s, 70s, and there was a lot of it around, and all right, I tried it. It didn't do anything for me. End of story.
He has since admitted that he did, after all, smoke cannabis on the 83-84 tour of New Zealand. By confessing, Botham hoped that would be the end of it, but Lords disagreed and weighed in with a 2-month ban.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is all my brain and body need.
Botham, the man of perpetual motion, found himself at a loose end and in the unusual position of spending a summer with Kath and the family.
Just look at the state of this flipping house already.
Darling, is it nice to have you back?
No, go on. I've had enough already.
He's absolutely hopeless about the house. He's always playing practical jokes, filling my washing up gloves of cold water and silly things like that. I mean, it's nothing worse than putting your hand into the rubber gloves, you know, and it's full of cold water or something like that, and he's very, very untidy.
The fact that he got banned did him no harm. He lost no money. He got publicity, if you want to be cynical about it. And I think the world sort of kind of felt with him.
It made him a bigger name. It made him known to a lot of people that aren't remotely interested in cricket. He was seen as charismatic. He was seen as someone that the women liked. I would say that, of course, there must have been minuses, but probably the pluses far outweighed the minuses, and he came across as someone that loved all the publicity and, in fact, craved all the publicity. Whether he wants to admit that, of course, is another thing.
All these stories that go, they're printing the papers about Ian and other ladies and everything like that. I mean, I could never turn around and say I trust him 100%. I don't think anybody could. If I did worry the whole time, I mean, I would just be a wreck.
During the ban, he made sure he kept his eye in.
Who remembers who came second? No one. Of course I want to be the winner. You know, everything you want to be the best at what you do.
Oh, bang! Tell him to not hit him so hard, so I can catch him.
You have to have ambition and drive. Otherwise you just plod through meaningless. You know, what's the point? I don't understand it, to be honest. I just find it very strange that people are quite happy to just drift through life. Surely there must be something they want to do.
With form like that, he was soon recalled to the test team for a match against New Zealand at the Oval. He needed one more wicket to equal the world record when he turned to bowl his first delivery from the pavilion end.
I'm just short of the world record. First ball came in. Bruce said, go. Gucci juggled it.
I nearly dropped it, actually. I didn't catch it cleanly. I sort of, it went to me, it caught me in the heel of the hand and bounced forward, and I caught it at the sort of second or third attempt.
And I just turned to where the selectors were and just gave them the full. That was good. I felt good. And I remember Graham Gooch going up the wicket to me and he said...
Who writes your scripts, Ian?
And it was great. I felt, if you like, it was almost like a reward, justification. Well done, yeah, hung in there, you've got it. And then, of course, I broke the world record a couple of hours later.
Beautiful ball, right off the bat, and Ian Botham has become the greatest wicket taker of all time. His 356th Test wicket.
He's my hero. Ian Botham is my hero. I'm older than him, but I look at him in wonder. And when he provokes thoughts in my mind. No Englishman has done that. None. He has. Not no Mr. Blair, no Mrs. Thatcher, or nobody provokes so much thought in my mind about life than Ian Botham has.
Botham demands loyalty from his friends, and he shows it too. When his county, Somerset, had finished bottom of the county championship in 1985, the club sacked its overseas stars Viv Richards and Joel Garner. Botham stuck by them, leaving Somerset in protest, and to this day has waged a war of words with the man he holds to be responsible.
What was being done was absolute and utter rubbish. It was one man's crusade. He couldn't handle the three of us. He was too weak to handle us. And that's Peter Roebuck.
The fact the club finished bottom in 1985, has he taken 1 ounce of responsibility for himself? The fact that he was banned for 2 months in 1986, has he taken any responsibility for himself? I doubt it.
I'm not quite sure what his problem was. Maybe it's some form of inferiority complex, I don't know.
He's a very insecure man. In those moments, one discovers that. In terms of his cricket, he's not insecure at all. He'll take you on the cricket field, take anyone on, and did so with great rewards and showing great fighting qualities. Off the field, he's insecure.
If someone crosses me, or double deals me, or betrays loyalty, there's no second chance.
He doesn't forget quickly, and in his judgments, he's pretty black and white. I mean, although I've known him change his assessment now and again. I mean, he's a good friend, terrible enemy to have.
In the late 80s, the gaps between Botham's show-stopping performances lengthened.
Botham on 99, Hughes the bowler.
But when they came, they were still magnificent.
Straight down the ground. And now he really is going to go. He smashed that, Miles. Another short ball. He smashed that one to mid-wicket. That one's well pitched up, and this one smashed straight down the ground. He really is cutting loose. He's murdering Hughes. And he's hit that one straight down the ground. Straight into the boundary it goes. 22 runs off the over. And what a player he is.
In 1987, he teamed up with his friend, Australian captain Alan Border, to play for Queensland. Thanks to Headingley, Botham was a big draw in Australia, and his presence bolstered the Queensland attendances. On the pitch, he didn't disappoint.
I am the passenger.
But off the pitch, Botham was soon in trouble again. He was fined for trashing a dressing room in Tasmania. But more seriously, he then got involved in a blazing row with another passenger on an internal flight.
You don't do the stuff, you all jump to conclusions, you're very quick to criticise. And I fed up with hearing from the press, in every country I play, I have a right to the public. What about the public showing me some respect? If that man had kept his nose out of an argument that had nothing to do with him, between Alan Board and myself, none of this would have happened.
Back home, questions were asked at the highest level.
British MPs are looking for my second. Let me tell you, let me have a guess. A Labour Party.
I wouldn't argue too much with him because you probably end up on the floor, flat on your back, to be honest, because it can sometimes get heated, you know. He's the sort of guy, you know, always likes to have the last word on everything.
Of all the things he's been involved in, actually, that was one of the most serious. I'd say the most serious, more serious than things to do with drugs or fights with sailors or whatever. If you get stopped for things on aeroplanes.
He was fined by the courts and the Australian cricket authorities, but shrugged it off.
Well, $5,000 is, what, about 50 quid at the present rate with sterling, so I'm not really too bothered.
Alan Border tried to rein in his wayward friend.
I put this ban on no drinking once you've left the ground. You can have a few beers after the match, but once you've left the ground, that's it. Well, Ian didn't agree with that.
If I'm wound up like that, I'm going to go out in the evening, I'm going to have something to eat, and I'm going to have a glass of wine. That's the way I am. You know, I won't be told because we've lost a game, you know, schoolboy, you know, slap your wrists attitude. And I told him, I said, well, drop me.
So we had a bit of a disagreement over that, reasonably heated, and I was just disappointed with Ian because, you know, I was the captain, he was the overseas player.
I said, well, AB, I'm actually quite disappointed with your attitude on this. And, you know, there was nothing evil about the conversation, and, you know, then the press said, oh, well, Border and Botham at feud, you know, we don't talk to. It's absolute garbage.
There was a genuine cooling off period over the next couple of years. We didn't see a hell of a lot of each other.
So the charge that you undermined Border when you were there, how do you respond to that?
Now, who made that charge?
What if I make that charge?
On what grounds?
On the grounds that he was asking you to do something and as the captain, and you were having a disagreement with it.
My old man was in the trenches, I think, so that I could debate things like that. You know, it's a democratic society, and I felt that was dictatorship beyond and above the call of duty.
Botham was sacked by Queensland. He learnt of his fate while on his fourth epic charity fundraising walk for leukemia research, this time taking elephants over the Alps.
I'm here actually to talk about Hannibal, point one. I don't really give a stuff what's happening 12,000 miles away.
Botham continued to be a force in county cricket for his new English team, Worcestershire. But his appearances on the big stage that he loved so much became less and less frequent. He made his final Test appearance at Lord's in 1992.
Out! And that's the end of Botham.
In his Test career, he had scored 5,200 runs and taken 383 wickets, arguably the greatest all-rounder the game has ever seen. His final playing years were spent in the cricketing backwater of Durham, the newest county team, but his heart wasn't really in it.
What's the point of me playing? After the arenas I played in the crowds I played in, the moments I've had, I wanted to go out remembering those, not, you know, down that slippery slope, you know, where I see, unfortunately, you see a lot of players still do, you know, hang on too long.
When an old cricketer leaves the crease, you never know whether he's on.
On the afternoon of the 19th of July 1993, Botham retired from the first-class game. He was 37.
I sat back and I thought, I actually felt at peace. I thought, great. Now what am I going to do? And it was about 3 days later. You know, the crowd out there were begging for me to come out and wave to them. And I was in a trance. I just didn't want to do anything. I just sat there in the dressing room. I didn't want to move. I thought, you know, I had to come to terms with it myself. You know, it's the end of 20-odd years as a professional sportsman. And I sat there, and it took a long time to sink in, and by the time it had sunk in, the crowd obviously had gone home.
But they soon returned. Retirement has seen him build a second career as a cricket commentator and pundit. He's still raising money for leukemia research, £4 million and rising, and still unable to keep his name out of the papers.
I wouldn't change much at all. You know, I'd jiggle a little bit here and a little bit there, but in quite honesty, I'm very lucky. I look at a lot of people around me, and I'm very thankful for what I got.
He was a great cricketer for England. He was a great cricketer around the world. He put bums on seats, and you could describe him as a superb entertainer.
It's absolutely ridiculous to judge Botham or other famous sports stars by a much higher standard of judgment in which they're expected to become some kind of role model for the rest of us, not just as cricketers or sports people, but as citizens.
Outrageous, certainly the naughtiest boy in the class.
If you meet a character in life, a one-off like that, I think that's a big privilege. Huge privilege. It enriches your life. Yeah, that's what you say about it.
Look, I mean, it's always easy in hindsight to say somebody's great. The word is misused. Overused and misused, terribly.
And that's a gorgeous shot. Down the wicket, over the top, into the pavilion, 6 runs.
But no, great in his term was not misused.
26 fours, a 6, and 145 not out. He came to the wicket when England were in dire straits at 105 for 5. It has been a phenomenal innings.
Get the latest cricket news straight to your desktop by visiting BBC Online at bbc.co.uk/cricket.